Hello and welcome back. This is lecture 2 in our Developing with Yii2 series. In the last lecture, we looked at installing Yii, creating our first project, and we also created a database called My Blog. We added 2 tables and added some records to those tables, and we also connected our application to that database. Right, so in our db.php, we came in, changed that database name to my blog, and then we created our post class, which uses the edb active record namespace, and of course our class has to extend active record. And here we are just defining the name of the table, which is posts. Over here in our site controller, we created a variable called posts, and we're using this syntax post find all, and we are just simply doing a print r on this variable here, and that's how we ended up with this nice object. So you can see the data is coming back from the database in an array format. So if you want to learn some more on how to use active record, I would recommend that you come here to the guide and click on working with databases and active record, and it will familiarize you with the syntax that we'll be using throughout. So you can see here it's showing you how to do some queries using active query, and these are the MySQL equivalents. So you can see here we did a customer find, and you can specify ID and that you want to find one, and it has some different examples that you can come in and take a look at. So what we want to do right now, we want to look at how to do CRUD operations. So of course we know that CRUD means read, update, and delete. And right now we are reading from our database. As you can see, we're getting back this array of objects. So what we'd like to do in this lecture is just put this information in a nice format that is more readable. So let's look at creating a table to display this object. So before we do that, let's come back here to our site controller. So the next thing that we need to do, before we can display these posts in a view, so we're going to display it here on our index page. So right now we're displaying 3 different headings, and it's just showing some lorem ipsum. So we're going to keep this row. This is the body content. We're going to keep this row, and we're going to get rid of these 3 rows or these 3 columns, and we're going to add a table and display our posts in that table. So in order to do that, we can come over here to our Bootstrap framework. So like I told you before, Bootstrap comes pre-installed on the front end of every application. So the only thing you need to do to get some Bootstrap in your application is copy and paste that code snippet. Alright, so let's get into the documentation, and let's find a table that can display our posts. So we need to go to we need layout, and I'm going to try to display content, and of course we need a table, and I believe we can just grab this first table here. That doesn't look too bad, so we can just go ahead and grab this table and use this in our project. So let's copy this, come back over here to our project, and paste it in right here. Alright, so what I would like to display from my table is, first I would like to display the ID of the post. So So let's just call this post ID. We can display user ID, and then we want to just display the title and the body. Okay, so we're going to be using a for each loop to grab the database, the data from the database. So we'll just be needing one row, which will populate as many different times as we have for as many records that we have in the database. So let's get rid of these two rows, and we're going to make this row dynamic. All right, so before we get to that, we first have to pass our post data to this index page. And in order to do that, we have to now come back to the site controller, and we're going to, remember we spoke about this render function, this return function. This is rendering our index page. So this is an array that can contain our post data as well. So let me comment this out since we won't be using it. I'll just leave it there. So let's comment that out. And we want to, I'm going to undo that. So we just want to comment out. Let's just remove it. So we want to return this post variable to our index page. So we can simply adding a comma, and we can say we want to add our posts data, and usually we just map it to a variable with the same name. So posts, and we're gonna include this variable here with our post data. So in order to check that, hold on, let me do a quick undo. I'm gonna copy this. Let's redo everything we just did. So let's copy this and now remove it. And let's do exactly what we just did here. So we want to use our posts. Okay, so let's save that, and now over here on our index page we can confirm that this post data is being transferred over in our application. So let's put this between our PHP tags, and we want to print this post variable. So let's save this and let's come back to our project. Let's refresh it. Let's remove this first and save it. Refresh it, we get back our application. All right, so this is our table with just one row currently, and once we add in this print our posts, you can see that we're now getting this post data also on our index page. All right, so let's go ahead and just remove this. So now that we're getting our data on our index page, we're going to need to do a for each loop that will populate our table for us. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, we want to come right down here in our table body. So this is the section that will be repeated. So let us now dive into some PHP. So first we want to do some defensive programming. So we're going to say if the count of our posts is greater than 0, we're going to come down here and we're going to create this row. Else else down here. So we can say PHP else. Else we want to simply create a row that's going to display that no records were found. So TD, no records found. And down here, after that, we want to end our if statement. So we do an end if. Okay, so quick recap. If the count of posts is greater than 0, create our rows. Else, we want to display a row saying that no records were found. All right, so now we want to get into our for each loop. Let's open up our PHP tags once again. And we want to say for each. We want to say posts as post. Auto-generated this for me, but I do not need this here, so let me come back. All right, so for each posts as post, we want to print a row, and this first row will be the ID. So instead of echoing 1, this is going to echo out the post ID. So we want, and we can actually do the equal sign here. The equal sign stands for echo. So we can say post, and we want to display ID. Then we're going to display the user ID. So let's open up our tags, PHP. Sorry, we're just going to use the echo statements, and we're going to say post. And this is the user ID. And let's copy and paste this. So we're going to display title and also body. All right. And then finally, we can end our for each loop. So let's come down here, PHP, end for each. And that should actually show the records that we currently have in our database. So let's go ahead and save this and test it out on our front end. So let's refresh this page. Right, and here you can see we have our table, the post ID, user ID. These two posts were created by the same user, and we have our title and our body. Not sure why this @ symbol is coming in. Let's take a look at that and see why that's happening. Body. Okay, here we have an @ symbol here, so let's go ahead and remove that. Save it. Let's come back. Right, so now we have our title and body showing. And if we were to add another record, so let's go ahead and add and insert a record to this table. So we're going to create post from user 1. TGIF is the name of the title. Body, can't wait for the weekend. Okay, so we're going to have the current timestamp And we're gonna just insert that record. And now once we come back and refresh this, it should simply display that record from the database. So that takes care of the read portion of our implementation. Okay, so remember we're doing CRUD, create, write, create, read, update, and delete. So let us add in the buttons for those functions, and in the next video we're going to look at implementing that functionalities. But first let's finish up by adding those to our user interface, adding those buttons. So let's come back to our code, and we want to create a read button. So let's create that somewhere here above the content. So we can come up here and we can create a new div. And inside this div, we can create, and let's give it a class of row. Okay. So inside this div, we can specify a create button that will point to a function which will live inside our site controller. All right, so we like I said, we're gonna implement that functionality in the next video. So let's go ahead and create our button. So let's put it inside of a span. And we can go ahead and do some HTML. And of course, this is going to be using the Yii helpers library. So we want an A tag. And of course, we can see that our A tag takes a string and a URL. So let's go ahead and add those. So the first parameter will be the name of the button. So that's going to be our create button. The second parameter is the controller. That's where when you click this button, that's where the functionality is gonna live. So that's gonna live inside of our site controller. So of course we specify it by saying site. Sorry, it should be inside a string. Site / and we're gonna create a function called create. And finally, let's add a class. We're gonna just make it a primary button, so we can add a bootstrap class btn primary, and of course close off our PHP tag. So let's push this out a little bit here. So let's save that and take a look. So refresh. Right, so of course we have our create button. So we click on this right now, and of course it's going to tell us that we cannot find that function. So now let's create a section that will update and read and delete any of these records. Right, so we would like to add, let's add another table row here. So we want another row, and inside this we're gonna have 3 spans. Let's quickly copy and paste, and we will be using our Yii HTML helpers again. So in order to not have to type this out every single time, this part about Yii helpers, we can include it in the top of our project. So here we can say use parameters HTML, and now we can get rid of this prefix. So down here we'll also be creating some more HTML tags. So excuse me, forgot to open up my PHP tag, sorry. We can do an echo. HTML and let's call our first one view. And this view is going to take two parameters. First one being view, and second one being the ID of the record that we're going to pass in. And of course, we're going to make this relate to the post ID. And we can add another class to this. We can say let's give this a label. So we're going to call this label dash primary, and that should do the trick. So let's save this and check it out. Refresh. All right, so we have a nice little view label here. So let's add two more for update and delete. So I'll just simply copy this code, make it a little bit quicker, paste. This one will be update. And of course, with the update, we will also need to be passing in the ID. So we're going to leave this post ID, and the same is true with our delete function. We will be passing in the ID of the record to be deleted. So let me change this. Let's make this a default, and we can make this label a danger label. And let us save this and check it out. And we get our nice labels here for each record. Alright, so that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll look at implementing the create, view, update, and delete functions for these buttons. Alright, thank you. See you in the next video.